Hello, I'm Lynn Doyle. Thank you for joining us here on Meet the Doctors, where each week we look at important health news, medical breakthroughs, and alternative therapies, and then we tell you how they may impact you and your family. We take a look at the facts so that you can make educated decisions because we want to empower you to take charge of your own well-being. Coming up on today's show, there's big news on the obesity front. A diet pill that has been fast-tracked by the FDA could be the new wonder drug in the fight against obesity. A leading endocrinologist will weigh in on the debate, along with an internist who claims the FDA could have approved this breakthrough drug a whole lot sooner. We're also going to tell you about 4 vital tests that can help prevent heart attacks and strokes, and it may just save your life. And then later in the show, our panel of doctors will answer your email questions. But first, let's take a look at the news. A newly developed high-tech electronic skin can detect small breast lumps better than many self-breast exams. The eSkin monitor is comprised of microscopic nanoparticles and polymers that can detect tiny suspicious abnormalities and then provides images of them. It could actually help doctors identify tumors earlier, thereby improving a patient's survival rate by a whopping 94%. The device might also be refined to screen patients for early signs of melanoma and other kinds of cancers. You see, small masses of cancer cells are not always easy to catch, which is why mammograms are often unreliable. And of course, MRIs and ultrasounds are very costly. And for all of the 36 million migraine sufferers in the U.S., meditation might be better than painkillers when it comes to severe headache relief. Patients who practice meditation and yoga, or what's called mindfulness-based stress reduction, for 45 minutes at least 5 days a week had 1.5 fewer migraines each month. Those migraines were also less severe and significantly shorter compared to those receiving standard treatment. Get this, eating fish may actually reduce a woman's risk for hearing loss. That's right, you heard right. Researchers at Brigham and Women's Hospital in Boston found that eating at least 2 servings of fish and omega-3s each week could help prevent or delay hearing loss. The large-scale study, no pun intended, involved more than 65,000 women who were followed from 1991 to 2009. Now, of these women, more than 11,600 actually developed hearing loss. But those women who ate 2 or more servings of fish weekly had a 20% lower risk for hearing loss than those who ate fish only rarely. It's not clear if men can net the same benefits. Getting enough sleep each night may mean that you're less likely to take time off from work due to illness. Scientists followed the sleep habits of 3,700 people in Finland, aged 30 to 64, over a 7-year period. Now, those sleeping 5 hours or less, or 10 hours or more, were absent from work every year on an average of 5 to 9 days or more. People with the lowest risk for taking time off due to sickness? Those who slept between 7 and 8 hours a night. Investigators found the ideal amount of nightly sleep for women was 7 hours and 38 minutes, while men needed 8 minutes more. Why am I not surprised? Well, here's a very novel way to know when you've had too much alcohol to drink. A special smart shirt has been designed, and it puffs up its sleeves as the wearer's blood alcohol level rises. It's a prototype called Metamorphosis, and it's designed by a Korean artist, and it's actually capable of reacting according to the quantity of alcohol consumed by the wearer. Absolutely amazing. Now, low levels of vitamin B1, better known as thiamine, can cause a condition known as Wernicke's encephalopathy. It's a dangerous disorder that mimics dementia and other neurological conditions, such as confusion, hallucinations, coma, loss of muscle coordination, and even vision problems. Neurologists say it typically occurs in people who suffer from alcoholism and anorexia, and if it's left untreated, the condition can lead to permanent brain damage and even death. This week, President Obama addressed the U.S.'s growing concern over the threat of the deadly Ebola virus. Here's what he had to say.
It's spiraling out of control. It is getting worse. It's spreading faster and exponentially. Today, thousands of people in West Africa are infected. That number could rapidly grow to tens of thousands. And if the outbreak is not stopped now, we could be looking at hundreds of thousands of people infected.
So is this deadly virus something that we should be concerned about here in the United States? We go to our Deputy Health Editor, Nick Tate, who's joining us from our studio in Florida for the answer to that and much more about this. Nick, should we really be concerned?
Well, Lynn, this is the worst outbreak of Ebola that the world has ever seen, and as the President said in his announcements this week, we need to do more to really make an effort to target it. The President met with the CDC in Atlanta, and the Senate held hearings in Washington this week to examine whether the U.S. response is enough. And some have suggested that we as a country have not been doing enough. We need to be doing more. Members of Congress have suggested that we should create a military base there. We should have military efforts really overseeing what's happening with the government's response to Ebola. And so this week, the President announced that there will in fact be a dispatching of about 3,000 military troops to help tackle the Ebola outbreak. We also are planning to spend money to build about 17 treatment centers, train thousands of healthcare workers there, and establish a military command center to coordinate what's going on. In addition, of course, the U.S. is spending a lot of money providing medical supplies, outfitting healthcare workers with equipment, and fast-tracking new treatments, and also shoring up protections at home should Ebola make its way to hospitals here in the U.S.
In fact, the CDC actually came out with a program for hospitals just in case an Ebola case would come to the shores of the United States. Can you tell us about it?
Yes, there's a 6-point plan for hospitals to prepare and to be on the lookout. What they're really trying to do is they're trying to make sure that anybody that shows up with suspicious symptoms is treated and isolated. Now, the truth is that Ebola is really a bigger problem in places in the world where healthcare facilities don't have the kinds of standards that we have in the U.S., where disinfection procedures are not as sophisticated as they are here. So the concern that there might be a huge outbreak here is relatively low. But of course, if it should happen because of global air travel, bringing people over from West Africa and other places who may have been exposed, because that concern and that potential is always there, we're really trying, the CDC and other health officials here are really trying to raise the firewalls and protect citizens in the U.S. from Ebola coming out of that region and coming to our shores.
All right, Nick Tate, thank you very much. No reason to panic at this point, but I know that you'll keep us up to date on the latest information as it develops. We'll take a short break now, but when we come back, we have a 4-test expert who's going to tell you what you need to know that could save your life. Stay with us for that as Meet the Doctors continues right here. Welcome back to Meet the Doctors. You know, anyone who has a family history of heart disease or who already suffers from one is no doubt concerned that a heart attack or a stroke could very well strike without any kind of warning. But Dr. Perry Frankel, a New York cardiologist, has designed 4 non-invasive but very vital tests to prevent serious heart damage or even death. He joins us now to talk about it. Doctor, it's nice to see you.
Thank you, Lynn and Newsmax, for inviting me.
You actually developed these tests because your philosophy is that doctors should just not treat disease, but do everything in their power to prevent it.
Exactly. I utilize these tests because heart disease is the #1 cause of death in America, and it's not just a man's disease. Just as many women die every year from heart attacks as men. It kills 10 times as many women as breast cancer. It's equal to double the amount of all the cancers together in women. So it's a disease that's a #1 cause of death, and the key is it's preventable.
Well, let's talk about one of these 4 tests that could actually prevent heart disease or heart attacks in both men and women. What is the simple procedure?
It's called an ankle brachial index. The arteries of your legs that supply blood to your legs are a window to the heart and the carotids. And if there's blockages in the legs, you're 3 to 5 times more likely to have blockages in the heart and the carotids. And a test in the Journal of the AMA in 2008 shown that test where they measure blood pressures in your legs versus your arms. If the pressure's lower in your legs than the arms, it's indicative of disease in your legs. And if your number was 0.9, which means your blood pressure was less than 90% of your arm, you were 420% more likely to have a heart attack as a woman as a man and 350% higher likely to have a heart attack as a woman.
So that is truly a very non-invasive test, but one that could tell someone that they're about to have a heart attack.
And then you get aggressive where you bring in the wellness component. It's one thing having a test to help predict who's at risk. You need to treat it. So people that have abnormal ABIs, you get very aggressive with nutrition, exercise, medicines if they need. You take care of their cholesterol, their diabetes. 69% of people that have their first MIs have hypertension. 77% of people that have their first stroke have hypertension.
Well, let's talk about strokes, because after heart disease, stroke is number 3, I believe, in the number of lives that it claims each year. You also have come up with a test that could be a predictor of someone who is vulnerable to a stroke.
Exactly right. You're better than most doctors. 1 out of 3 patients don't survive a stroke. 2 out of 3 at 1 year still have deficits such as loss of power in an arm or a leg, trouble speaking. What's the point of doing the test, which is an ultrasound of the carotid, looking for a blockage after a stroke? Number 1 cause of long-term nursing home admissions. It's a strain on the economy. So what if you looked at people that were high risk? We have a program where we hand out questionnaires, and if you have multiple risk factors such as hypertension, diabetes, high cholesterol, family history, wouldn't it be better to see if somebody has a blockage early on than after a stroke?
And how would you do that?
It's a simple ultrasound of the neck. We look at the carotid arteries. We see if there's plaque or no plaque. At a recent event we just did at a corporation, one of the men answered yes to several of the questions. He had a 90% stenosis of his carotid artery, which led him it to be fixed. And we could even, a lot of the patients have less than 50% we pick up, and then we put them, they need to be on a program, and you have leverage on them, Lynn. When you tell somebody they have a blockage of their carotid or their leg, they're very willing to listen to you.
It would get my attention, I can tell you that. Also, another killer, 71 to 90% of the time, is when someone has a ruptured aorta or an aortic aneurysm. Can you actually predict if someone has that, or tell if they are a candidate for a ruptured aorta?
You can. Just like the carotid, the key is knowledge. 75% of people, going back to carotid for 1 second, don't know they have a blockage at a carotid. So if you find the blockage, you prevent the stroke. As you asked with aneurysms, 65% of people that have aneurysms don't know they have an abdominal aortic aneurysm. And an aneurysm is when your aorta is more than 3.7 centimeters in the chest or more than 3 centimeters in the abdomen. It's a simple measurement. So you do an ultrasound of the abdomen or of the chest, and you see, is it more than 3.7 or more than 3 or less, and you prevent a fatality.
Speaking of preventing fatalities, falls, especially among older Americans, contribute to 13,000 deaths a year and more than 1.5 million hospitalizations. You've actually come up with what seems to be a very simple test to see if someone could actually become the victim of a fall or even a deadly fall.
And then you could help prevent it. You're completely right. 1 out of 3 seniors are going to fall this year. 70 to 80% repeatedly. 20 to 30% hip fractures, head trauma, life-altering. We know where we are by our legs, our eyes, our inner ear. As we get older, the legs don't work as well. We have arthritis and things like that, back issues, the eyes, cataracts and stuff like that. And you're dependent on the inner ear. 85% of falls in seniors are due to inner ear dysfunction. Simple test where you put electrodes on the head called the vestibular test can measure exactly what the inner ear is telling your eyes and brain, and you can predict if somebody's going to have a problem walking horizontally down a flight of stairs. Vestibular physical therapy is very effective at markedly reducing your chances of falling. We spend $19 billion a year just in Medicare in the emergency rooms. So all these things you can save lives and cut costs.
It sounds like you have developed a market that will end up saving a lot of lives, particularly here in the New York area. What's the response been when you give these patients these suggestions? Are they more than willing to kind of take some of their health care into their own hands and be proactive as opposed to being reactive?
Great question. When you educate people and when you give them data showing that they have an issue, they're very willing to listen to us. And I think what we can do, we take it to the community. We've been in Bedford-Stuyvesant, we've been in Brooklyn, we've been in the corporations. And I think when you educate people and you explain to them that you can save their lives, you can make a big difference.
And that's what you want to do. You not just only want to save lives, you want to enrich them so that they can be healthier and enjoy their lives. Now, these 4 tests are not just for anyone. They're for people who have pre-existing conditions or who have a family history or are at risk.
100% correct. When we do a health fair, whether it's a community event in the Bronx, whether it's at a top corporation, we hand out questionnaires. If they answer a yes to multiple questions, we study them. We keep statistics. We also been working with the American Diabetic Association. And if they're abnormal, we treat it.
You're doing a great service for your patients, and we certainly appreciate you sharing the knowledge with our viewers as well. It was great to have you with us.
Thank you, Lynn, for inviting me.
Thank you. Good to see you. We have to take a short break, but when we come back, obesity, we're going to talk about it. It is a killer in America. Is there a new drug out there now that could actually help you lose weight? We're going to find out that and much more as Meet the Doctors continues. Stay with us. Welcome back to Meet the Doctors. I'm Lynn Doyle. You know, obesity continues to be one of the most pressing health issues of our time. But just days ago, the FDA approved the drug Contrave, which may be the most promising in combating America's obesity epidemic in years. Here to weigh in on just how this new drug could make an impact, we return to our Florida studios and Nick Tate. Nick, what can you tell us about it? Is this the so-called wonder drug in fighting obesity?
Well, Lynn, it sure would be nice to think so. About 2 in every 3 Americans are overweight or clinically obese, so anything that would help bring those numbers down would be a positive. But the truth is that Contrave is hardly the first pill to be hailed as a kind of silver bullet in the nation's war on obesity. In fact, the first diet pills were developed 100 years ago, and as you might expect, there have been some pretty nasty side effects with those drugs and with drugs that were prescribed in the 50s and 60s. There have even been some pretty well-known failures like fen-phen, which was prescribed to about 18 million people a year in the 1990s before it was pulled from the market because of heart problems that that combination drug caused. There have been other drugs on the market. Orlistat was recently approved. This is Ally, Xenical. And in the last 2 years, the FDA has also approved 2 other weight loss drugs, Cusimia and Belviq, but neither has sold especially well, despite the hype that they both received. So the hope is that Contrave will succeed where the other drugs have not been as successful. It does have some things going for it that past diet pills did not have going for them. First, it's actually a combination of 2 previously approved drugs, and in fact, it's not prescribed as a cure-all, but it is prescribed for individuals who combine it with a healthy diet, exercise, and other lifestyle changes that can bring their weight down. So the hope is that it will triumph and have some impact where past diet pills have not.
Thanks, Nick. I know that you'll keep an eye on it for us. We are going to get some more information about this new drug and whether or not it really truly can be a wonder drug. And to help us do that, we're joined now by Dr. Rachel Pessa-Pollock, who is an endocrinologist. She's going to tell us more about that. And we also are joined by Dr. Joe Golfo, who is the author of Innovation Breakdown: How the FDA and Wall Street Cripple Medical Advances. Thank you so much for being with us. So an endocrinologist is someone who deals with hormones. So when you look at this drug and you know that hormones play a role in fighting obesity, do you think it could be a be-all and end-all for people who are battling weight?
So of course, obesity is a major problem we're dealing with every day. 1 in 3 Americans are obese, but with that comes a host of factors that play a role. Now this drug is especially targeted for patients that are having issues with obesity despite increasing their activity following a good diet. It's in combination with everything else in their lifestyle. It contains 2 components, so we're dealing with naltrexone and bupropion. Bupropion is an antidepressant. It's been on the market now for some time, especially for patients who are addicted to tobacco. It's a tobacco cessation drug. And the other component of it, naltrexone, is actually an opioid antagonist, meaning people that are abusing alcohol or addicted to opiates use this medication. So this is a different way to look at weight loss. We're working with the brain. We're trying to help people lower their appetite and lower the ability that they get, the enjoyment they get from eating food. And that's a different way of losing weight than what we've been used to as fine.
So Contrave will attack obesity differently than some of the past drugs. Are there any side effects or risk to this particular drug?
Of course. So the initial stages of the drug, in 2011, it was not approved, and there were concerns around blood pressure issues. And we do know in some of the data that there is a 5 millimeter mercury increase in blood pressure in the diastolic blood pressure. However, bupropion can increase your risk for seizures. So if you're somebody that has a history of seizures, you don't want to be going onto this medication. Additionally, if you have a risk of depression and severe suicidal thoughts, this is not a good medication for you.
So you really need to work with your endocrinologist to make sure that it is the right drug for you.
Absolutely, and we do know there's an increase in heart rate on these medications, so if you have a cardiac arrhythmia or an abnormal heart rate, you don't want to be on these medications.
And yet for some, this is really going to be a breakthrough. It's going to be what they need to lose the weight that is putting their health at risk. Dr. Golfo, could the FDA possibly have approved this previously, or did it go through the standard procedure of testing and retesting and making sure it was safe?
Contrave should have been approved 3.5 years ago.
Why do you say that?
Because they had a positive panel, an FDA panel of experts, who voted 13-7 in favor of the drug. But the FDA rejected it when they rejected Qsymia and Belviq originally. Then the United States Senate gave a directive to the FDA by March 30th, 2012, come back to us with a plan for doing something about obesity. That's when Qsymia and Belviq were approved, but they didn't approve Contrave because Contrave started a big trial to prove that the cardiovascular effects were minimal. And so now Contrave got approved, but the benefits of the $100 million trial in 3 years are not in the label. It still says the cardiovascular effects cannot be established. So this poor company got victimized. Rachel did not have something in her armamentarium 3.5 years ago to help her patients. And that's what it's really all about. Get drugs that are safe and effective in the hands of the doctors to work with patients, know the patient profiles, and help them with these critical diseases.
Now, there was another drug that's been okayed by the FDA, but it's more for diabetes. Is it Victoza?
Right. So a common drug we use for treatment of diabetes is Victoza. What that is a GLP-1 agonist, and that's a different way of making you feel full and lowering your glucose levels. So for diabetes patients, this has been a miracle drug in that it's resulted in weight loss in addition to control of diabetes. What they've been doing now for the past few years is studying it at a much higher dose, so a 3 milligram dose compared with the standard 1.8 milligram dose. And an FDA advisory committee recently came forth suggesting that this get approved as a weight loss drug for patients without diabetes. And from an endocrinologist perspective, we're very familiar with this drug. So for us, or I'll speak for myself, I do feel comfortable using it, which is a nice added bonus, especially after you've seen the benefits in your patients.
And this is not the first time that's happened, right? Where a drug could be approved for one ailment and then physicians find that they have benefits in another area of a person's health.
Happens all the time. And what the companies will do is then develop that claim, like what was happening with Victoza. But the irony of this is amazing to me. As if they didn't hurt this company Orexogen enough and not get it in the armamentarium 3.5 years ago, the day after they approved Contrave is when the panel recommended favorably for Victoza. So now Contrave's going to come to the market with 3 competitors ahead of it, when it could have been on the market for 3.5 years and established itself, and Rachel would have known the exact profile of patients to use it in, and it's been a very effective drug entrenched in practice. The irony is incredible.
You point out the irony, but you also are in favor of an overhaul of the way that the FDA works and operates.
Yes, for this exact, what we're seeing. It was inertia at the FDA to approve diet drugs based on the past. It took congressional oversight to break through the inertia. And yet this company, because they got penalized for starting a large trial, that just shouldn't happen.
Dr. Pesapolak, what would you say to people who are watching who say this may be the drug I've been waiting for? What advice would you give them?
I am still very hesitant about using weight loss drugs, and I think that has to be reiterated. We don't have long-term data. The ongoing LIGHT study is looking at Contrave and looking at major adverse cardiovascular effects. We need that data too. So for the right patient who's exercising and watching their diet, it's great.
Okay, on that note, I want to thank you both for being with us. It does seem like a healthy lifestyle is what people have to strive for above all. We have to take a short break, but when we come back, the doctors will be answering your questions, so stay with us for that and much more. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Meet the Doctors, and this truly is when you get to meet the doctors. You write in your health concerns and questions, and we put together a great panel of doctors and medical professionals to try to answer as many as we can for you. Joining us in our New York studio is internist and gastroenterologist Dr. Ian Lusbader of NYU Langone Medical Center, and also here in the studio with us is endocrinologist Dr. Rachel Pesapolak, who is of Pro Health. Joining us from our Florida studio is our Newsmax health contributor and neurosurgeon, Dr. Russell Blaylock. We welcome everyone to the show, but I'd like to start with you, Dr. Blaylock. It's good to have you with us.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Before we start with our viewer emails, I would like to get your take on Ebola. Everyone is talking about it. It seems like there's some concern among American citizens. The president has addressed it. What reassurances would you give to our viewers about it?
Well, I think the most important thing to understand is that Ebola in the African population is much more virulent than it would be in the American population. And that's because of two factors. Number one, most of the African population has parasitic infections, which severely impair their immune reaction and ability to fight the infection, and their malnutrition, which is somewhat ubiquitous in the African population. In the United States, this virus would have far less virulence, that is, ability to induce death in the American population. So I think you would see far less of a harmful effect of Ebola in a population like the United States.
Well, I'm sure that that's very reassuring for our viewers. So let's get started with our viewer questions. I'm going to put you on the hot seat because the first question is to you, Dr. Blaylock. Our viewer asked, am I putting myself at risk if I get a flu shot this year? I've heard that it may actually cause more harm than good.
Well, the problem with the flu shot is it has very little efficacy, that is, ability to inhibit the flu. Most studies have shown no more than 30% in clinical studies, not just the way the CDC measures it, which is inaccurate. And in children 4 years and younger, the largest study, which included 400,000 people plus, found that it had no efficacy whatsoever. It's no better than a placebo. But you're putting yourself at risk of mercury toxicity because it still contains mercury, and you can get Guillain-Barré, which is an ascending paralysis. And so there's neurological consequences, long-term inflammation of the brain that can occur with this vaccine. Pregnant women shouldn't get the vaccine at all, despite what you're being told. It increases the risk of spontaneous abortion, and it increases the risk of damage to the baby's brain. So that would be my precautions.
All right, we thank you for that. Would our doctors in New York like to address the flu shot and give us your perspective on it?
In general, the CDC recommends flu shots on a population basis. You know, whether, Dr. Blaylock is right, whether you individually getting a flu shot will decrease your likelihood of getting the flu is at best a relatively small number. We can debate exactly what that number is. However, in light of pandemics like Ebola that can decimate large populations, think the Spanish flu, tens of millions of people dying in 1917 because of lack of resistance, there's some thought that by immunizing large populations you can decrease that risk. But certainly it's got to be individual, and certainly there's individual reactions, mercury issues, and so forth. Those are fair concerns.
Dr. Pesapolek and I were in the ladies' room together. I'll share this with you. And we were both ferociously washing our hands and using the paper towel to open the door to leave the facility. And we commented on taking those kinds of precautions to try to avoid becoming ill this winter.
Certainly, and I take care of a lot of patients with diabetes, so I'm always trying to reinforce to my diabetic patients that I cannot afford for them to have the flu, and I would like them to take a flu shot.
All right, on that note, let's move along. We have another question. This one is directed to Dr. Lustbader. I've been getting hot flashes lately, and when I do, I get short of breath. Is that a reason for concern? Could something else be going on other than menopause?
So certainly simple explanations like perimenopause or menopause can certainly give you hot flashes. Pregnant women can get hot flashes. There can be lots of conditions that can do it, including rare things like cancers, carcinoid, tumors that raise your blood pressure. But in general, what I would say is whenever there is shortness of breath, that's a bit of a concern, and I always recommend patients seeing either their physician, perhaps a cardiologist, just to make sure there's no other underlying heart disease that may be associated with this.
And another one now for Dr. Pesapolek. I've been taking methimazole for 8 years for hypothyroidism. I'm worried about taking it for so long. What do you think about that?
So 8 years is a long period of time to be taking methimazole for hyperthyroidism. Methimazole is an antithyroid drug we use to treat an overactive thyroid. The critical part is figuring out why the thyroid is overactive and considering perhaps a trial off of methimazole to see if the thyroid is still overactive.
Thank you for that answer. Let's return to Florida now, and Dr. Blaylock. Here's a question for you, sir. Are there any dangers in eating genetically modified foods, also known as GMOs, or are they safe in your opinion?
Well, there's a number of studies that shows harm. For instance, there's studies that show harm to the pancreas, harms to the stomach, GI tract, pulmonary damage. But the most impressive study showed that in the animals that were fed GMO foods, the females, at about what would be midlife in humans, the females developed very aggressive, large breast cancers. The males developed severe liver and kidney damage and died very early. Also, the effect on reproduction, which has been shown to reduce fertility that lasts for 3 different generations. And it's not dose related, so it doesn't matter how much you eat. Exposure to the GMO can produce this effect through 3 generations, so you may have infertility for that length of time. So it's quite a concern. I'd recommend people avoid GMO foods.
On that note, we are going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll have more of your viewer questions. So please stay with us, because Meet the Doctors will continue right after this. Let's return to answering some of our viewer emails about their medical conditions. Our next one says, I was diagnosed with diabetes about a year ago. I've started taking Glycomet SR 500 milligrams, 1 in the morning and 1 at night. Are there any side effects with this drug? Also, I'm obese and I want to lose weight, so what's a healthy diet that a diabetic should follow? I'm going to turn to Dr. Pesapolek for that one.
So Lynn, this is like many of my patients who are newly diagnosed. They have some weight to lose and they get started on metformin, which is really a first-line medication for diabetes. What metformin does is it stops the liver from pumping out sugar, and it's a great medication because it has a favorable weight profile to it. I would encourage members to take a look at the American Association of Clinical Endocrinologists website, where they do have patient resources related to diabetes. Metformin is a first-line medication for diabetes and a great one, particularly combined with diet and exercise.
So you're using a different name than what our viewer wrote in because it says Glycomet. Is that a derivative or something different completely?
So I'm assuming she's using one of the forms of metformin 500 twice a day, yes.
Okay, thank you.
It's a brand versus a generic name, and typically doctors like to use the generic name since we're most familiar, and there can be hundreds of brands.
All right, thank you. Let's go back to Florida with Dr. Blaylock. This question for you says, what can I do? My mother is 70 and recently starting having problems with dermatitis on her face, her chest, and behind her ears. It gets better at times, then it flares up. She recently started taking a low-dose steroid, which has helped a little bit, but her dermatologist was surprised that it did not, quote unquote, cure it. Do you have any ideas of what could help?
Well, one of the common problems we see in the elderly is real dry skin, and it's because of deficiency in oils, particularly things like DHA, CLA, conjugated linoleic acid, and GLA, gamma linoleic acid. And usually if they supplement with these three oils, the dermatitis will get better, and they're all anti-inflammatory. The advantage is they don't have the side effects that steroids have. So I would suggest that. Magnesium can help also because it's anti-inflammatory as well. And if you need to go further, you can take things like curcumin and quercetin, which are plant flavonoids that are powerful anti-inflammatories that can help as well. And in combination, it works even better.
Thank you. That leads us to our next question about men and whether or not they should take calcium supplements.
So calcium's been in the news for a long, long time. Most recently, there's been a debate. We used to say, take calcium, take vitamin D. Most people, certainly in the Northeast, are vitamin D deficient, and we certainly recommend taking that. There's been some question as to whether calcium may increase atherosclerosis and calcium deposition in the coronary arteries and in the neck and so forth that may lead to more advanced coronary disease or atherosclerotic disease. So what I would say is there's really a question. I no longer recommend my patients take calcium, certainly the men not to take calcium. Usually there's plenty of calcium in the diet if you have enough milk products and cheese and so forth. Vitamin D, however, I'm a big fan of, and we can talk about that another time.
We could talk about it now because I actually have a question. I'm told that little marks that I get on my Irish skin are an indication of a vitamin D deficiency, even though I spend quite a bit of time outdoors and in the sun.
Right, so those lighter spots, I'm not a dermatologist, always good to see a dermatologist for a variety of reasons, including risk of skin cancers and so forth. But no, those white spots aren't necessarily a sign of vitamin D deficiency. One simple thing to do is a blood test will tell you if you are vitamin D deficient. Certainly sunlight is one form of vitamin D, very helpful, but most patients, certainly in the Northeast, are vitamin D deficient. I think it would be good to take a vitamin D supplement, not only for your skin, but there are other benefits as well. But no, any unusual skin changes, dermatology.
Dr. Lustbader, Dr. Pesapollock, thank you so much for being with us, and Dr. Blaylock, thank you for being with us as well. Until the next time, we want to thank you for watching Meet the Doctors. Until the next time, stay happy and healthy. I'm Lynn Doyle.